Hello, the Alphabet Decipher app had to be released through the domain of ancient gaming system instead. I couldn't figure out how to get Alphabet Decipher uploaded the HTML to GoDaddy. In other words, but the app is slash apps is that ancient gaming system, and it apparently has a little bit of you type your name in, for example, press the button, it gives you decipher of your name or of any word. And if you type in, and then you press the button below it, and you get further decipher. And there's more that could be there, but this is just first because, in other words, this connects to further for proofs. Because I'm trying to communicate with people, and people pretend they don't understand you, so they could take away, as the breaching method showed them. People where, for example, people have stayed evil, preventing use from evidences where and how we have black pupils, whites of eyes. And so, too, regarding government through news reports, I all the videos they have, they're speaking about like Elon Musk with accountability for government. And I recorded with a hyper AI intelligence method. I already proved. I had, even before the killing between Russians and Ukraine, they had that conflict. A means to demonstrate the wound there with the human species body. And I had them forced in a place to enforce negotiation, and drones involved in a counter theater too, because you guys have been counter theater, and the difference of that self-value roles, self-defended roles, which can't self-defend itself without valuing criminally foreign influence and slash tactically delusions wrought. And the slash part also has the nature as standing criminal insidiousness nature slash hyper and criminal insidiousness nature, with all natures of experts. It is recorded how they have this in our faces, black pupils. So it is not just cartoon characters, all in those buildings stacked in New York City, the cartoon value nature systems version of it. Now, not extorted the way the suburbs were designed tactically denatured for the torture, extortion, and to be a theater. Because everyone knows that there's a breaching method. We have to drink, when we drink water out of bottles. Someone's saying, "Oh, I want it," but that's a subject we could. We could debate it. So they have subject treatments that leave out the details and that make them up, and they change people's words and fake what they're saying when they mention predicate acts properly, let alone predicate act methods. Whole predicate act methods were bound by a singular hyper evidential breaching method, black pupils. So here we gather. YouTube, forgiveness is because there is a name that is not A through Z. There is a name that was entrenched. There was a method that was entrenched right through the founding of modern countries. For example, this is why and is how. England doesn't even remember the history of English properly. Everyone has the sciences, entertains a certain type of victim slash hyper victim. It knew would only be, it could sustain roles with, also through other natures of roles with it, like economies, natures of industries. So, and shock and awe. See, this breaching method shows our most sophisticated legal lines and non-legal lines. And the difference between that they all need to hide their uses of criminally foreign influence, fact-cheating nature, quality aspects of nature already being and having been used as collusion slash S with whole predicate acts methods, and not just regarding black pupils, whites of eyes. But this is just one of the increasing ways that nature shows us things. See, there are nature shows, and we can monetize this. We can make a virtual, you know, production company. We can seize how, like, for example, when they say inclusion, these are people putting their arms around the people in the cities and in the suburban/urban, and the differences between the exceptions. The suburbs were designed to cause negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, and to force people onto its value nature system and rules, ignoring a whole bunch of stuff, but pretending other with sense and sensibilities. Go get your food from this store now, regardless of who the store, or blame the store. Every nature of industry. What are witch trials about? What are the descriptions about? About that still that difference of them roles. They this breaching method makes people on all sides of criminal and civil cases. Their lawyers, their family members, their neighbors. The same thing with the courts. The same thing with the intelligence community. The same thing with the news. The news pumps out stories with fake information used to further justifications of and cover-ups of, used remotely by a breaching method at countries A through Z too. So it's manifest and has been manifest. Things that appear to be only criminal foreign influences are really hyper criminal foreign influences here or there. Mexico and Canada have people make, and Cuba have and have had people making fights between them and America. And it's not just the other countries, because it's the same thing done there. This breaching method hides behind that. It came from before modern religious messengers. The ancients couldn't fathom anyone could get behind, could get accomplished, let alone get behind a plan that would get the entire species body, every single individual, to forget and force everyone else to look away from what nature is actually demonstrating, what we are really capable of, what really speaks for power or might. Like that, we could have built over. There's a difference between needing money and why and how people have to be dishonest about it. You guys know there's a gang of 8. You guys know that even the senators don't know things about it, and because half the things, there are so many, the countries fighting with each other are shared with campuses here. They're kids too. In other words, and there, per this method that was entrenched before modern religious founders, it has slavery entrenched northern colonies and southern colonies in its control of, through everyone else with control that we discern, of the breaching method. And all exceptions are you guys fighting to pretend any identity of the science's voices had integrity. Any one of them, especially differentially, like with the law, black pupils. So in other words, we connect. We don't know the difference between people wanting to give. People know that any kind of charity or thing like that's going to help the cities. People want simultaneously the breaching method, how its roles, forcing. They design suburban houses before America's founders were born. I learned at Central Connecticut State University in notes that there were laws against it. If anyone had been found out to have been speaking about building houses, infrastructure outside of internationally monitored conversations, themselves and everyone around them would be hurt. Chick, it would be just torture, worse, killed, worse. And so it kept everyone in layers, collusions with methods and natures of industries that just made hyper additional the same thing, but now through others, just like a programming method, needing to get over on the same nature, needing to get over on descriptions of how it works, needing to use what is easy and what is hard, descriptions of it tactical ulterior from how nature does, because there is that one identity that is not us. It is that not the other species bodies that are with us sequentially. They're distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneous, but also per that further hyper simultaneous that we could discern as its own body, why and how. We have the same quality aspects in nature that neither the other species bodies invented nor us. And with that, in demonstration of it. But we have those demonstrations also being and having been effectively employed by the preaching method to be blamed on other things, others, ourselves, and through ourselves. Ourselves as the human species body of individual bodies. And with all group differences in demonstration of the same thing. And with all exceptions and exception nature that appear to be demonstration of other. Also coming with demonstrations of the same thing and lethal hadiths, which is the identity of the hyper simultaneous, its identity of relationship to itself and the value of that relative to a special difference, where it is equally relativity. It is an identity of equal relativity to all parts of space / existence. But then the earth has a temporary / lasting concentrated difference to itself sequentially, where we are more value to itself, one way, temporary / lasting at earth. Or that difference is forced from here, lethal hadith, as forced space nature transfer, as its negative identity of relationship to itself. And so, in other words, we come to the beginning of the Old Testament with this, where there is parsing of the identity of value / value progression that came before matter and that generated it. And this being as pantheism had been revealed per a method, being led by how it is also, nature shows us it is functional, how there is its identity is hyper invisible but still discernible that way in other ways at the same time, which is where and how it also shows us to appreciate its body complete, how its body where it's a semi-nature and the active part where those two interact, where a part of itself that won't be, it's showing us to appreciate the part of itself with any subject. This is also the same identity that is the extent of truths that we know that are true always from the past. The extent of truths that we know are true always now, active and grouped. And the extent of ways we know that are true always to come as value, even if they don't come, regarding where and how we can be led by and discern the body of what is true always. See, but the second we start holding this to the appreciation, description of how reason, logic, nature works, we are confronted with those means, black pupils, to discern other things, others, ourselves, being pretended and convictions by them, even formally, as collusion / S. With this breaching method, we could also discern. In other words, keeping but at campuses A through Z, other has been communicated for James Madison and for our founders behind him and his plan. Then they communicated. And then further, when him as a president. And further regarding the extortion of George Washington. No one will allow anyone to be honest about the extortion of George Washington, or this would have brought this up. So Central Connecticut State University also is recording, confessing, demonstrating, confirming. They have roles of people from Russia, people from Ukraine, people from Canada, people from Mexico, people from all over the world. Involved also with intercities, Connecticut's police departments, and courts, and names off the state of Connecticut judicial branch offices and corrections offices. Roles of the grounding where a breaching method was hyper sophistication, use of those locations, use/s of those locations, and the founding locations, like where George Washington had to come and counter extort using James Madison's plan, and which was also the counter extort and force the other founders to be founders. But they had to leave no slavery entrenched sickly distinctly, but also sickly non-distinctly, a part of that breaching method against every single person, a torture, extortion, slavery method, sickly distinctly too. So even though it was positive for everyone to counter how sickly non-distinctly, it was also sickly non-distinctly against everyone. Manifests three ways as a torture, extortion, slavery method. It was functional, but people would speak for a reason. The science is leaving that out, making excuses, the ways the breaching method would need it. And it knowing that too, then that certain type of victim/hyper victim only allowed to have been heard speaking formally. In other words, we have lipoaggressions that would self-value collusion/S with those most critical and but also simultaneous and most overt, but also simultaneously most insidious. And because right where there are collusions between everyone, not one of them discerned. The name of the scientific value of this breaching method, let alone that with nature showing us how it is functional, that there is its identity being hyper invisible but still discernible. Conjunction/hyperconjunction to all parts of things even made up, but therefore to all parts of the invisible but still discernible. Parts of speech, of grammars, and of English grammar. England here, our name again. America here, republics. In world, republic, there are proofs that the legion never moved with tribes in its original form. It's more probable and practical anyway. In other words, when the republic was originally revealed to humanity, it was before the scientists from off their locations had become criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought more and more through hyper additional apparent and real motivations, natures, needs, interest, also stacked to hide behind and through, where a semi-ancient breaching method, or in other words, it is more probable and is demonstrably not just more practical, demonstrably there was to convict that there was a semi-ancient, to theorize, let alone to convict that there was a semi-ancient transnational organized crime group that knew it was going to get caught. And it was mixed between people that were interbranch intelligence, other countries, and overt criminal enterprises. And but they knew they figured out this first. So what they figured out what they would do was to cause really bad things and then to sustain them in ways to get people to counter them syntactically wrong and to blame other things other themselves, and to defend that, knowing that they could build on that. And they organized this. before modern religious messengers were even born. See, the nature assigned differences A through Z, therefore names A through Z, to be demonstrated to be communicated about, not leaving out how its volume science is non-distinct from all other ones, but it is also distinct from them per science. See, when there are proofs that the ancients were showing the value of not having one name for God, but having one name. Knowing that there's one identity of hyper-simultaneous. And it comes with its demonstration of its identity, to the extent we could discern with every subject. Like time. It has those three parts of time grouped. We know about the seasons that haven't even come here yet, because it's showing us the three parts of time grouped. The active now, and the extent of the past we know. It's showing us that we know that there's a part before that we don't know about. It's showing us that there's active reality truths now that we don't know about. There's things that we're tricked about. We know that too. It's showing us that we have been systems tactical ulterior from its own hypernative pure. It is showing us the difference between president / chief is its own difference, where it values, like your body, its complete identity, the cell nucleus, the cell body, and the cell wall. Their complete identity values them sequentially, unequally. But it's simultaneously, and that simultaneously increasing value that it gives to each part of itself uniquely. Together, simultaneously, they increase their own value. It's how nature shows us to describe what's going on. Vaccines. I teach us things, but long. So, the word so, C omega. So it's not complete, but in other words, I didn't put the if, then, and things would translate completely properly. But there's also three natures of translations. And this being it's going to be, in other words. But like this, we pay attention. Anyone who denies that there are black pupils, whites of eyes, and when it comes with this, our means to discern that there was a predicate acts with facts method that generated a whole bunch of methods and U/S of that no one wanted collusions with. And it knew that, it made all the exceptions. And no one's paying attention with that because it's hiding between instances. It has roles with all natures of instances, including murders, all natures of criminals, of people prosecuting of them, of people jailing them. They have roles in the worst natures of predicate acts methods, because any voice that uses this method could reveal the answers everywhere at once. In other words, all legitimate means. In other words, they're not going to. They like it when people fish. Well, where's the money going and all that? Because, in other words, they know they have to fund all these things because they left law described as is. They left the science's voices described as is. They left the nature of debate reliant upon criminally foreign influence, fact, cheap nature, quality, aspects of nature itself as criminal and ceased as nature. Otherwise, that body is sensed through other selves. This has all natures of difference of locations, too. That can be described with grouped words. There are also the breaching method exploited that phenomenon. This breaching method exploited its database relativity and nature's database relativity and our relativity to databases, and instead replaced with logic and reason and syntax. Instead employed tactical ulterior. Tactical ulterior has been and is being communicated for James Madison and for the founders behind him and his plan, which is to tell us to get the Constitution unabridged and to pay attention to where, to how, and to why. We have rights that are too numerous to have to list them, and how that was exploited, where the breaching method didn't allow them free speech, and it used and uses their words, pretending that's debatable, leaving out what they declassified or censoring that body if other, and adapting to it because it already had the overt criminal enterprises, the private ones, the terrorists, the interbranch and intelligence tied to them, styles relative to the already, the justifications of the predicate acts and predicate acts methods with the databases side of it. All sides and all names with all sides of cases. There's another name involved with it. There are other names, not just the other ones that we can discern. There's a scientific method value of that breaching method too. How you doing? I have to. You see my boxing videos. How you doing? I your comment. I have to train. I have to get a boxing license. Then I can train. No, I'm going to get a fight. You know what I mean? I had a bunch of fights through USA boxing, but I never got a professional boxing license yet. And people associated with the World Trade Center attack, before the attack, in that context, and still and since, people with Connecticut courts have roles with foreign and domestic military, and former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and co-defendants of his and his lawyer. They have roles on off places associated next to, like, people that were going to work in my corner in boxing, who have also been planting evidences intercities with all sides of criminal and civil cases. There's an Eric Burgess who's and there's an Emily and or an Amy, and the difference between the name switching, because they have roles with courts that switch names and sequences, and have been planting evidences at crime scenes, also with news, and the difference of them or their roles with public television people. Now they also have their roles with the other different nations at and next to the campuses, collusions with them, and they don't know the extent of it, because even all sides don't know the extent of it. And this is relative to where and how the suburbs are still manifest that way, let alone the cities, where clearer than day there is a torture, extortion, slavery method that is not debatable. Everyone who has pretended it's debatable, where they have excuses too. In other words, that the difference of that's also having been used by the breaching method. It is not debatable. Anyone who tries to debate it will have inherent to, active to, and progressive to. Their logic, their nature of logic, demonstrations of the same thing. Boxing. I'm not even a lawyer. The sciences, boxing, martial arts, and wrestling are grouped by the identity of the hyper-simultaneous. Black peoples, it is time. Lawyers too. A Trantolo and Trantolo is recorded, confessed, demonstrated